What's going on, everyone? This is Kevin here, coming at you with my review of the Nokia G400 5G. So without further ado, let's get started. Now this is one of the latest budget affordable phones from Nokia, and what's really cool about it is that it is being offered in the US, both factory unlocked and also at Metro by T-Mobile and regular T-Mobile. Now it does feature an MSRP of $239, and at least right now at Metro, you can get this phone for just $49.99. So I definitely recommend going the carrier route if you can, as you'll definitely be able to save a lot of money. Now as time goes on, pricing and availability definitely will change, so definitely take a look at the various links in the video description to see the most up-to-date information regarding this phone. Now before I show you a variety of different things about this device, let's see what all comes included here in the box. So here's the box the phone does come in. This is the factory unlocked version of the phone. So it is possible that if you get it through a carrier, you will have a different box, but here we go. So you can see right there, Nokia G400 5G. There's a picture of the phone up front. Then on the back of the box, we have some basic specifications for this device, but I'll be going over all of this throughout this video. Then included is a SIM card removal tool. We have a double-sided USB-C cable for charging and data transfer. We have a quick start guide. And then we also have a 20-watt USB-C wall adapter. So it is really nice to see that this is included here, especially when nowadays a lot of manufacturers are not even including a charger in the box. So not only do we have a charger included, but it's also really good. Now with this device, we're getting a very large 6.58-inch display, and it does feature Corning Gorilla Glass 3. So that does make the display extra durable. Now the display itself is LCD, but one really cool thing about it is that it actually features a 120 Hz refresh rate. Now when I first heard the news that it had that faster refresh rate, I honestly couldn't really even believe it. I had to see it for myself, especially because I think this is the most affordable phone I've used so far that actually has that premium refresh rate. Now if you're not familiar with the benefits of that, essentially, everything runs a lot smoother here compared to a more traditional smartphone that has a 60 Hz refresh rate. So it just gives the phone kind of a more premium feel and just makes it feel a bit more expensive than it really is. One thing to keep in mind though is that this faster refresh rate is actually not enabled by default. So when you set up the phone, you're going to want to go to display settings, then go down to screen refresh rate, and switch it from standard to adaptive. So it is pretty ironic and surprising that this phone has such a great feature here for a lower end device with this faster refresh rate, but they don't even have it enabled by default. Now one thing to keep in mind though is that if you want to get the most battery life out of this phone, you probably will want to use the standard 60 Hz refresh rate and not the 120 Hz refresh rate. But at the same time, since we have that feature here, I definitely recommend keeping it enabled and I guess keeping an eye on your battery as well. And if you find yourself having battery problems with the phone, then you can always go back to the standard 60 Hz refresh rate. Now beyond that, we're getting a 1080p display panel with the phone. We're getting a PPI 401, a 20:9 aspect ratio, so a more narrow but taller form factor, and we're getting an 81.7% screen to body ratio. Now with that form factor of 20:9, it does make this phone ideal for social media because since the display is more taller and narrow, you're gonna be able to fit more of your social media feed in one frame. So technically you won't have to scroll quite as much because you're able to see more without having to scroll. And then when it comes to viewing video content on this device, you're also getting a very immersive experience, especially if you crop in. Now with this phone, we do have a water drop notch up top here, and that does feature the 16 megapixel front facing camera. And definitely stay tuned for later on in the video, as I'll be showing you a variety of different photo and video samples from all the various cameras here on the phone. Now internally with this device, we're getting 64 gigabytes of storage along with micro SD card expansion. Now 64 gigs is pretty decent. I think that will be adequate for most people. And if for some reason it's not, then at least you can always offload photos and videos, for example, onto the micro SD card. So in general, I think we're getting a decent amount of storage here for an affordable device like this one. Now, unfortunately, there is no wireless charging with the Nokia G400 5G. So if that is a feature that you're expecting, then just know that you're not getting that here. However, with this phone, we do have a fingerprint sensor on the power button. So let's give that a try. There we go, very fast and responsive. Let's try that one more time. There we go, very quick. And in addition to having the fingerprint sensor, this phone also has face unlock. So I do appreciate that we have multiple methods here for accessing the phone. Now taking a look at the back of the device, we have a triple camera setup. We're getting a 48 megapixel main camera, a 5 megapixel ultra wide angle camera that can capture images at up to 115 degrees, And we have a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera for portrait mode. And with this phone, we have portrait mode for both the rear and front cameras. Now here's how things look on the camera app on the device. This is with the main rear camera right now. Then from there, we can switch over to the ultra wide angle camera. And with that, we can fit a lot more content into the frame. In general, I especially like to use the ultra wide camera when I'm traveling. Maybe I want to take a photo of a large building, for example, or a lot of scenery around me. It especially comes in handy for that. And overall, I just like how it kind of changes up my photos compared to just using the standard camera at all times. Now then from here, we can go over to portrait mode to get those nice blurred out backgrounds that I know that everybody's a big fan of. We can also flip around to the front facing camera and take portrait selfies as well. And we can also take standard selfies too. So definitely a lot of different abilities here when it comes to using the various cameras on this phone. There's also night mode, which is pretty cool. You can also go over to more to find some other functionalities such as dual sight. That's a pretty interesting one where you can use both the front and rear cameras at the same time. But overall, a lot of features here, and I do actually have a dedicated camera tips and tricks video on the channel, so definitely take a look at that as well. Now with this device, we're getting 4 GB of RAM paired up with the Qualcomm Snapdragon 480 Plus 5G processor. Now overall, definitely expect to get kind of lower end mid-range performance with that processor. And what I mean by that is that for phone calls, text messages, watching video content, going online occasionally, and also some occasional social media, this phone will be adequate for that. But if you are somebody that's always on your phone, maybe you're playing high-performance games, you're editing photos, editing videos, doing all those various tasks, then I definitely think you probably will be pretty disappointed pretty fast with this device, as you'll probably find slowdowns when doing those various things. So definitely keep that in mind. You certainly are getting what you're paying for with this phone, but at the same time, I think for most people, it is adequate. Now, as the name of the processor and the phone itself do imply, this phone is compatible with 5G connectivity. Now, at this point, in 2022, I do think you can get by with just 4G LTE, but on the other hand, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me to go through all the work and time and effort to buy a brand new smartphone and not have it support your carrier's latest and greatest network. So I certainly think that this phone having 5G is certainly a great value add here. Now, as far as the overall performance of the phone goes, I did run a benchmark test using Geekbench 5, and I'll show you the scores from that test right now. But essentially, I got a single core score of 547 and a multi-core score of 1669. So what I recommend doing is running this test on your current phone and then compare your scores to these scores to get a better idea of how the Nokia G400 5G compares to what you currently have. Because it certainly is possible that this phone might be slower than the phone that you have right now. Now, video recording with this phone does max out at 1080p at 60 FPS with the rear camera and 1080p at 30 FPS for the front. Now that is a bit unfortunate. I was hoping to see 4K video recording here with the phone, but unfortunately that feature is nowhere to be found. Now with this device, we are getting a very large 5000 milliamp hour internal battery, and as I showed you earlier on in the video, we are getting a 20 watt fast charger included. So being able to recharge that 5000 milliamp hour battery pretty quickly with that 20 watt fast charger certainly is a great thing, especially because if you tried to recharge this phone with a slower, maybe a 5 watt charger for example, it would take a lot longer. So that's definitely a great configuration overall, and definitely expect to get very good battery life from this phone. Now the software that we're getting here with the Nokia G400 5G is Android 12. We're pretty much getting a stock experience here. They didn't really add any sort of extra features or anything like that. So if you're familiar with using Android, then the experience here will be exactly what you're used to. Now I'm not aware of if, when, or ever this phone will be getting Android 13 or even other newer versions of Android. I know at this point, Android 13 is out. It's on the Pixel 7 Pro, for example, and I haven't heard anything from Nokia regarding when this phone will be getting an update to that, but I'm certainly hoping that it will. That being said though, I wouldn't buy this phone with any sort of expectation of getting future versions of Android, considering that Nokia doesn't necessarily have the best track record when it comes to giving us timely updates. And another awesome feature about this phone is that it does feature NFC. So NFC is the technology that's used to make mobile contactless payments using tap and pay, for example. So if that's something that you already use, then just know that you can still use that here with this phone. Now, there are a lot of people that just assume that every Android phone at this point in 2022 has NFC, but unfortunately that's not the case. And especially with many of these lower end budget phones, we still don't have NFC. So the fact that we're getting that here definitely is yet another reason to consider getting the Nokia G400 5G. Now here's some camera samples from the phone, and overall, I'm very impressed. Now, I certainly wasn't expecting too much, considering that this is a lower end device. So for what it is, it does a great job. You can take some really nice looking selfies, for example, same with close-up images. Also, the ultra-wide camera does a pretty decent job for a lower end device. So you can definitely capture images with this phone that are of good enough quality where you can share them on social media with no problem at all. You could even frame these photos. So in general, I don't think Nokia could have done a better job than they did with the cameras here, considering that this phone is an affordable device. But let's now take a look at some video samples from the Nokia G400 5G. What's going on, everyone? This is Kevin here, coming at you with a front-facing test video from the Nokia G400 5G. This video is in 1080p, and I'm definitely curious to know what you think of both the video and audio quality. And here is a 1080p test video using the main rear camera on the Nokia G400 5G. And we do have autofocus in video mode, and it's very fast, which is great. Overall, it seems like we have a pretty decent camera system here for a relatively affordable device. And here's a test video using the ultra-wide camera with the Nokia G400 5G. So the ultra-wide camera is not quite as good as the standard camera, but at the same time though, we can fit a lot more into the frame here, so it does have its own benefits. And here's a test video using the cinema camera on the Nokia G400 5G. Kind of interesting, a bit different from what I'm used to. But now that we've gone over a variety of the different features with the Nokia G400 5G, let's take a closer look at the hardware itself. Now this phone is made completely of plastic, besides the display that's made of glass. So overall, I would recommend pairing this phone up with some sort of case, just to make sure that it doesn't get too scratched up as time goes on. Now on the left side of the device, we just have the slot for the micro SD card and SIM card. On the right side of the phone, we have volume up, volume down, and also the fingerprint sensor, which doubles as the power button. Then up top here, we have the noise canceling microphone. And then on the bottom of the device, we have the 3.5mm headphone jack, microphone, USB-C port for charging and data transfer, and the speaker. So it's definitely really nice to see that we do have a headphone jack here with the phone. I know that that's something that seems to be disappearing quite a bit from a variety of different devices. Originally, the iPhone 7 was the first phone to eliminate the headphone jack, and ever since then, we've been seeing more and more phones from more and more companies not include it. So the fact that we're getting that here is certainly a great thing, and if you happen to use wired headphones, then just know that they'll work really well with this device. Now, on the back of the phone, we have just the camera module and Nokia logo. We also have kind of an interesting pattern on the back of the phone, but unfortunately, due to having a glossy back, it picks up a lot of fingerprints. So I'm really not a fan of phones having a glossy back, and I certainly wish companies would stop doing this because there's really no benefit to it. At least right now at Metro, they are offering this phone for just $39.99. So I'm sure as time goes on, there will be various promotions like. Now the Nokia G400 5G is an excellent phone for watching video content. Everything looks really clear here, and of course with having that very large canvas at 6.58 inches, it does make it ideal as well because you can see the video in a much bigger picture here. So also having the ability to crop in and get a more immersive view is yet another cool way to watch video content on the device. And really the only shortcoming is that there is no stereo audio here with the phone. So when you're watching a video or listening to music, for example, you only get audio coming out of the main speaker rather than both the main speaker and earpiece as well. So that would have been nice as it would have made the audio even louder and clearer. But for what it is, I suppose that's the way things had to be. But in conclusion, I'm a big fan of the Nokia G400 5G. I feel like this device is an excellent, affordable option from Nokia, and certainly very competitive compared to the other options that we have out there in this budget range. Now, most importantly, I'm really curious to know what you think about this phone. Do you find it to be impressive, or do you find it to be nothing special? For me at least, I really like that we have that 120 Hz refresh rate. That really makes the phone stand out. I also like that we're getting really good cameras on it too. And I also appreciate that we are getting 20-watt fast charging and with a charger included in the box as well. So overall, a lot of value to be had here with the Nokia G400 5G, and I'm certainly hoping that they continue to launch more great affordable devices like this one as time goes on. But I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, definitely give it a thumbs up. But this is Kevin here, and I will see you in the next one.